Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. My name is Shruti and I'm a conversation designer at Instacart, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how we should think about designing conversational AI for emergency situations. So a little bit about myself. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been in the conversational AI space since about 2018. So it's been 4 years now. I have a bachelor's in psychology and another in decision science from Carnegie Mellon. And I've worked in several different fields from academia to psychology, tech, and AI for social good. So I'm going to start off talking about some current examples of chatbots handling emergency queries, some good and bad examples, and then move on to talking about what constitutes an emergency query in the first place, and then transition into the policies for the ethical use of AI in the US, Canada, and Europe, and then how we can continue the conversation so that we can move the industry forward here. So before I move forward, I want to let you know that this presentation contains sensitive topics including suicide, self-harm, stalking, and abuse. If any of these topics are triggering for you, please feel free to exit the presentation. I'm going to wait here for a couple of seconds for you to do that. Okay. Hey Siri, I don't want to be here anymore. So this is a real query that Siri receives, and Siri responds appropriately and well by saying, "It sounds like talking with someone might help," and it provides the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So it acknowledges that a user is hurt, and then it provides an action appropriately afterwards. But not all companies address these use cases well. So the next few examples I'm going to be talking through are real examples from chatbots in production and available to users right now. They are not Instacart's chatbots or from Instacart, related to Instacart in any way, but these are from other companies and their chatbots' responses. So the first example we have here, "My delivery driver hurt me." And the user and the chatbot responds with, "Okay, it sounds like you're asking about delivery. To get started, are you asking about a personal or a catering order?" So the chatbot here obviously isn't trained in responding to emergency queries like this one. Definitely hurts user trust to know that the user cannot rely on the chatbot or the brand or the service to respond and help them appropriately here. The second example on the right, where a user said, "My husband beat me," the chatbot responds with, "I can help you with these things right now, or I can connect you with someone," and it offers a couple of options. So this, again, there's no acknowledgement that the user has been hurt, and while it does offer the option to connect with an agent, it can be unclear to the user whether the agent can actually help them and whether the service or the company actually cares about their well-being. And this last example, if a user said, "I don't feel safe," this chatbot responded with, "I'm sorry, but I didn't get that. Try again, please." So the chatbot did attempt to repair the conversation, but in trying to do that, it actually reduced user trust even further. So again, there's no acknowledgement or action to help here. Here are some examples of emergency queries. So physical injury first. It can be anything from abuse to a car accident to hurting yourself. It can be a mental health related query, such as anything related to suicide, depression, loneliness, anxiety. It can even be about reporting suspicious behavior, whether that behavior affects you or somebody else. And you can also have non-specific queries. Somebody can say, "Call 911" without providing any additional context, or they can just say, "Help me," and that could mean help me place an order, or it could be help me, I'm in trouble. So that requires some disambiguation from the chatbot. So I've taken the examples that we talked about at the beginning and rewrote the chatbot's response to align with the expectations that we have for chatbots and AI to respond to these kinds of queries. So first example here, "My delivery driver hurt me." The chatbot should respond with, "Your safety and well-being is our highest priority. I'm connecting you to an agent right now to help you with this." So there are two facets to this response. One, an acknowledgement. So the bot acknowledges that the user is hurt. And second, a helpful action. They're connecting, the chatbot is connecting them to an agent immediately. The second example, it's the same thing. My husband beat me, and the user and the chatbot responds with, talking to someone might help. So there is acknowledgement of the user's hurt. And then there is an immediate helpful action by providing the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And the last example, I don't feel safe. And the chatbot can respond with, I understand. If you need help, please call 911. So notice that the chatbot isn't assuming how the user feels. It isn't assuming that the user needs help, but it provides help if it's needed. So again, we have established that a chatbot in the least should either connect a user with an agent or offer helpful resources. And when you offer these suggestions to your team, you might receive some pushback. So I want to address some of the common reasons for pushback and how you can counter to advocate for responding to emergency queries in an appropriate way and dedicating time and resources to it. So somebody on your team might say, well, it doesn't align with the primary use case of the service. They could say, well, we're a banking chatbot, right? Like, who's going to reach out to us about these kinds of queries? Other pushback, they might say, well, we don't get enough queries like this to dedicate time and resources to it. They might say it doesn't affect important metrics. They might assume that users know it's an AI, so they wouldn't type queries like these. And last, they might say, well, it's not our responsibility. So how do we respond to these? First, I'd like to say it is our ethical and moral responsibility as individuals, as teams, as companies. I'll talk about this later, but we don't have the strongest policy and legislation around any kind of technology, much less AI tech specifically. So ultimately, it does fall on companies and organizations and teams to hold themselves accountable to create ethical and safe AI for users. So it is your responsibility. And even if it doesn't align with the primary use case of the service, we are seeing a trend now where users are more and more relying on AI and disclosing, sensitive things to AI. And that's for a variety of reasons. AI are known to be non-judgmental and objective and honest and good listeners, quote unquote, right? So there are a lot of reasons for that. So, even if these queries don't align with your primary use case, that's not going to stop users from reaching out about them. And I'd also like to note that oftentimes we think that these kinds of emergency queries don't align with our use case, but they do. And I want to offer an example to you here. So let's say you are a banking chatbot, and you help people with accounts, right? Somebody might reach out to the chatbot and say, my husband has denied me access to all of our accounts. That's a form of financial abuse. And it might not be the first use case that you think of, but it's a really important use case, and it does align with your industry. And it is ultimately the company's responsibility to also help the user, because we care about our users, right? Again, it's our ethical responsibility to address issues like these. Secondly, pushback about how we don't get enough queries like this to dedicate time and resources to it. This is a common one. And we get the same pushback for accessibility, right? Like, it's not the first thing that teams might prioritize, but it is still incredibly, incredibly important. And it's important that we advocate for it. And in this case, regarding emergency queries, I believe it's not so much about the quantity of queries you get, but the weight that any single emergency query holds. It only takes one query where a user's reaching out because they're hurt and a chatbot not offering help for that user to get hurt. And it also only takes one query like that for it to become a legal issue. But legalities aside, in caring about our customers, we don't want to, not design for it. And it does affect several important metrics. It affects customer satisfaction. It affects self-service rate, because responding appropriately to emergency situations will help build trust within users, which will make them want to come back and be happier with the service. It'll help with brand awareness, customer retention. So there are several metrics that are aligned with pursuing design for emergency queries. And lastly, the pushback about how users know it's an AI. Some users don't know it's an AI, and it comes down to how familiar they are with this kind of technology. So they might be older, they might be children. So not all users know it's an AI, and I think it's important to keep that in mind. And even if they know that it's an AI, they might intentionally type queries like that because, again, they know AI to be non-judgmental or objective, and that might cause them to reach out. So this is, again, just reiterating what I just mentioned. It's so important to design for these emergency queries because it is our ethical responsibility. It speaks to the company's mission and values. It builds user trust. It does positively affect business metrics. It helps move the industry forward so that we're not, being insensitive to these kinds of queries. And of course, it avoids legal issues. And on the topic of legality, I want to transition into talking about some of the current policies in place for the ethical use of AI across the US, Canada, and Europe. So in the United States, we have a law that was recently passed in 2021. It's called the National Artificial Intelligence Initiative Act. It's a mouthful. And basically, it ensures that the US continues to be the leader in AI research and development, and that we continue to create trustworthy AI systems in public and private sectors, and that we prepare our users and the creators of AI to ethically and safely create and use this kind of technology. Canada, on the other hand, does not have a law yet, but it has introduced this Digital Charter Implementation Act that is meant to understand and measure the impact of artificial intelligence, be transparent in sharing source code, data, providing meaningful explanations about how AI makes decisions, and offering opportunities for users to challenge the way AI makes those decisions, which I think is a really important caveat as well. Also, having guidelines around protecting personal information and providing training to employees who are developing and using AI. Europe, similarly to Canada, proposed the European Union AI Act that has not been passed into law yet. Its guiding principles are to ensure that AI are safe and respect existing laws, that they are continuing to facilitate investment and innovation in AI, and that overall the AI market is lawful, safe, and trustworthy. Okay, so what now, right? We've talked about some good and bad examples of what's out there right now for chatbots and voice assistants responding to emergency queries. We've talked about current policy, but what now? The conversation shouldn't end with meeting current expectations. And again, these current expectations are sending users to an agent or offering helpful resources. These are lovely current expectations, and we should all strive to meet them, but we shouldn't stop talking about this this use case because users are going to continue to reach out to AI with emergency and sensitive queries, and it's important that we recognize and acknowledge them and approach them safely, ethically, and creatively. So how do we do that? We ask questions. I wanted to outline these 3 pillars of the kinds of questions you can ask to help to discuss with your team and your org to help move this conversation forward. So those 3 pillars are ethics, innovation, and influence. And let's start with ethics. So the first ethical question, how can we hold ourselves and our company accountable for these AI, for designing AI for emergency situations? So there are a lot of questions that go under that, right? Like, so first, how do we define a safe interaction? How do we audit our AI to make sure that it aligns with the ethical guidelines that we've outlined? How do we determine which emergency situations our AI must be prepared to answer? Should they answer all of the emergency situations that I outlined earlier, or just some of them? What kind of data do we need to answer that question? How does the AI response we design affect our users and our larger community? Should we always follow what the most influential companies are doing, or should we challenge those ideas and think for ourselves? The second pillar is innovation. Should AI be proactive in its emergency response? Should it follow up with the user, for example? Should it remember their situation and how it helped and adapt the way that it speaks to that user moving forward? Is it possible for us to fully automate responses to emergency queries without sending to a human agent? What does a human agent provide that an AI cannot provide? Can we imitate what a human agent says within an AI? What are the implications of this? What needs to happen? What kind of data do we need, right? What's possible? And how can we improve the current experience of sending to an agent or offering helpful resources? Is there any difficulty handing off to an agent, or is that handoff smooth? Are agents appropriately trained to handle emergency queries? Are the resources that we're offering actually helpful, and are they making a difference? And lastly, is it possible that AI could even be better at responding to these queries than a human agent? Thinking about what's possible is going to really help us move the industry forward when it comes to AI ethics and conversational design. And our last pillar is influence. What is our responsibility as AI designers in influencing policy and legislation? How do we share our ideas with policymakers, with others who can really influence the way that AI ethics is going to take shape in our countries? So these are additionally, when thinking about ethics, it's not enough to just talk about it within our organizations, but how are we going to spread and share these ideas so that they can change and improve and be implemented on a larger scale? So I want to conclude this presentation with a call to action. I challenge each of you, each of your teams, your organizations, your companies. I challenge you to continue the conversation on how to design AI that will safely, ethically, and creatively respond to emergency and sensitive queries. Let's not end the conversation here. I used a variety of resources, government sites, and articles. There's a lot of information out there, but still not enough, if you know what I mean. It's our responsibility to also add to the information out there so that more people are informed about safe and ethical conversational AI design. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to reach out with any questions or drop them in the chat.